now set. This course is sentencing guidelines for Android, and we're going to try and run through using the application in as much of a court orientation as possible. So what we're really trying to do is to show the application being used in the context of using it in court. Now, I've just mentioned orientation. The application is designed to be used in portrait or landscape. So as I switch between orientations, you see the menus then change to reflect the way the application is being used. Now, you notice things are not as quick as you would expect. I'm actually using an emulator, which means you'll see some slight speed degradation on my screen. Certainly your tablets are much faster than what we're using. Okay, so the first principles of the application are whenever you make an offense favorite, in other words, you simply click upon the star for the application, that adds the offense into your list of favorites. So clicking on the favorites button will just bring up the list of favorites for this particular session. And you can see the last offense that I ticked, which was alcohol sale offenses, is displayed on that list. So there's a simple principle that simply clicking, I'm just clicking off, simply clicking any of these stars makes it into a favorite. So if I scroll down those offenses, I just start scrolling that, you can see there's a little blue tab that appears as soon as we start to move down that list. And if you can pick that up, you can do a faster scroll down that list. So just a little hint, if you can catch hold of that blue symbol, you can scroll down the list much quicker. Okay, so let's just go into an offense. So I'm going to go into criminal damage by fire. And this will display the correct page within the latest sentencing guidelines guideline file. And you can see I'm having some slight performance issues. I'm just waiting for the offense to come on screen. Talk amongst yourselves while we wait for this thing to catch up. I'll just do that again. Okay, so cruel to a child, just some elements to explain here. We obviously take you to the actual page in the offense. We give you the ability to make favorite this offense from within the guideline itself. So, for example, you could have gone into here just double checking. This is the Children and Young Persons Act 1933, Section 1, bracket 1, and that confirms that's the offense we have listed on our court listing. This is now then added to our favorites. We provide a page previous and page next button because, as you're aware, your guidelines may be with a facing page on the left or on the right, so you can get to the next page. And I think in this release, we actually did space those buttons out slightly as a request from a Nexus 7 user because they're a fairly smaller device. We also do support the Kindle Fire HD, which is another 7-inch device, so it's pretty well similar to what you're seeing on screen here. So having viewed an offense, I can close down that offense guideline. I can go back to favorites, up comes the list of current favorites, hopefully sometime soon. And I can then go to the next offence in my court listing. Therefore, if I'm preparing for court, I would typically go through my my court listing in the order that we're expecting it to appear, so that as we've dealt with one offence, for instance, if we've just dealt with ABH, we could jump to affray, which is our next offence. That will close the favourites and display the next offence, affray, on screen. Okay, so that's starting to explain how favourites work. Let's just go back to the offence index for a second. At the bottom of the favourites pop-up, if we click on that, you can see we have other filtered favourites for all the other indexes in the application. So explanatory material, additional guidelines, pronouncements, etc. So as we go into the other parts of the application, I'll make some of these favourite, and we'll see these appearing inside these areas. Okay, let's just, before we'll come back to export and import, because we can demonstrate that where we've put some more items in there. Okay, so just clicking off our favourites back to the offence index, we also have the option of viewing the offence index by page, by act, and by group. So, for example, if you're working a motoring court, you probably want to work just with that list of motoring offences, and we can scroll down to that motoring list quite quickly. Now you'll notice as we're just going through these list of offences, the index spine reflects the colour within our A4 folders. So those are offences against the persons, act, and we're then into motoring, which is that familiar pink within this section. Okay, and what we've tried to do against every offence is, where applicable, we provide the actual Act of Parliament that's relevant for that offence. Some of them are just concerning use of the vehicle, others are specific Acts of Parliament that are referenced on the charge sheet or on the court listing that you have. Okay, are there any specific questions to do with using the indexes at all?
I do find it sometimes difficult to find the appropriate one. Never sure which is the easiest way to look at it, whether it by page or by alphabetical.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Well, you can always dive into search. So if you searches should be pretty accurate. So if you're looking, well, if we're looking for dangerous, sorry, I'm trying to use the keyboard. I should be using this. So if I type in dangerous, just waiting for the keyboard to catch up. So the search will then restrict that list to do anything to do with dangerous. So that could be a trick to get down to the specific offence quicker.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks.
Okay, good. So dangerous parking. I've never had a dangerous parking. I'd love to know what it involves, but there we go. Okay.
Come and watch me park. That's pretty dangerous.
Okay, good stuff. So that's one way of getting through to a specific guideline. Now, just some principles with the way I designed the index was to allow you to support your paper-based magistrates. We give you the page number as big as we can, so you can pass that along to a analog colleague who's still using a paper-based system. Okay. So I just mentioned that in passing. So back to the top index structure. So we've gone through all the offense indexes, and that's really getting you to the correct page in the Magistrates Court Sentencing Guidelines. We also have, within the same PDF file, the explanatory material. And this essentially gives you a detailed index of what's inside that particular item. So if you had a particular case with unusually low earnings, or perhaps high earnings, as an example, you could make these favorite for reference inside the retiring room. So, for example, if I now click favorites, again, apologies for the slight delay while my emulator catches up. If we now look at explanatory material, so I've clicked the bottom control, I'm clicking on explanatory material, and you can see we've highlighted just those two within explanatory materials. Okay, so that would take me through to high income offenders within the explanatory material. Okay, so high income offenders, where the offender is in receipt of high income, etc. So that's one way of using favorites for explanatory material to give you access to something else. Okay, so I'll just close that. We'll come out of favorites for a second, and we'll just go through the rest of the indexes we have on the application so they become clear. So I'm hitting the back button. We include all the additional guidelines, so whenever one is released by the Sentencing Council, we do our best to get it included within this list. Now, some of these you'll probably never reference, but for instance, dangerous dogs have recently come into effect. That could be made favourite if you're doing some dangerous dog offences. I'm clicking on drugs here, but not dogs. But there's dangerous dog offences, drug allocation guideline, and so on. So that's a list of additional PDF resources that you can have reference to. So that's additional guidelines. We also have pronouncements. I presume we obviously do have some chairmen on this course, so you've got pronouncements. The default is adults, but you can change these to any specific set of pronouncements. So again, clicking the little control at the bottom can give you access to adult, family, and youth. So just to prove we do have Welsh in there, that's the Welsh adult sentence pronouncements. We'll put it back to adult. So same again for favourites. If I make favourites these two particular, disqualification and discharge, these will appear within my favourites. I'm just waiting for favourites to reappear on screen. And you can see that's me clicking favourites twice, by the way, folks. I'll just go back onto it. Perhaps in the final recording, I can cut out these slight delays. If we click back on favourites, we can go and see the highlighted pronouncements that we have on the application. So there's two of the pronouncements, three of the pronouncements we've made favourite. I included a Welsh one just for fun, but if we click through on that, that will give us the discharge absolute for that particular offence. Okay. And that's probably one case where moving it into landscape would make it more readable, as an example. Can I just confirm, do we have chairman on the course? Are you guys chairman?
Yes, I'm chairman.
Okay. Are you just from seeing other chairmen using the app? I still see them using both the paper pronouncements and the electronic guidelines. They seem to work well together, I suppose.
Yes. I'm sort of. Yes, well, trying to still gaining confidence in the use of this. So, but I'm getting there. So I'm tending to take just this into the courtroom, and I've got the book left in the retiring room. So if all else fails, I can retire.
Yes, well, that's a pretty good approach. I started off by leaving it in the on the bench, then leaving it in the cupboard, then leave it in the car, then leaving it in the office. So I've reached a stage where you build your confidence up, and I think that's absolutely the way to do it. Don't jump in the deep end without feeling confident.
I did initially have a problem, particularly with the favourites. I didn't appreciate that there was a favourite for pronouncements, a favourite for offences, etc., etc. And so, although I was identifying the pronouncements in the favourites, I then went to open it up, and I couldn't see it. And it wasn't until further investigation I noticed the little box at the bottom, and then hence going into the pronouncements favourites, which surprisingly enough it was there.
Okay. Well, you found it there. You found it in the end. That was the important point.
I agree with everything you said there, and I think the problem is because there's only a handful of magistrates are using this in the courtroom, so there's nobody really that has had the experience that you can bounce off.
Yeah.
So everybody's relying on you to tell them, how it works.
Yeah. There are different numbers on different benches. I turned up to my LASPO training a few weeks ago, and a new magistrate turned up and said, "Have you seen one of these?" Oh, yes, actually, I have. So it just depends on the bench. We've got we've probably got 30 magistrates on our bench using technology. Other benches are higher. It just does depend. So let's just finish off going back through the indexes. Just touch on bench books. We do provide, if you're sitting both on adult and family panel, for example, we do supply all the bench books. What we are trying to do is to improve any of the indexes when we get any suggestions. So, for example, I keep being told that the family bench book index isn't actually that good. So if anyone has some better indexing suggestions, we can put any index we want into this structure. We just need to know which description you need and which page you want to go to. However, I will concede I've not referenced my adult court bench book outside of any training course, so we just don't reference it that often on the bench, but it's there if it's required. Okay, so that's.
Can I just say it is nice? Can I just say that you do listen to what people say. I had a query last month when I was trying to go to a page. I was using the search function to go straight to the page number. And I found that if it was a 2-digit number, it wouldn't take me to the page. This was very frustrating and made me look inefficient when I was trying to get to where I wanted to be. can I just say that you did listen to what I said, because you have now got the go-to page where it does let you go straight to a 2-digit number. Well done.
Okay. Well, we do listen. The one thing you can't do with this, you can't go to page 92G, because we only have a numeric keyboard. So, so there we go. So that should get us to page 103, whatever offence that is.
Theft.
Yeah, I think I've got an out-of-date version on my computer that should have gone to theft 103. It's actually gone to real page 103. So ignore my error in that the version you're running does go to the correct page number. Okay. So we've just touched on some of the other tools. I think we've probably gone through all the indexes that we need to. Let's go through these tools and preferences. First, just down at the bottom, what we're asking you to do, if you've not already done, is to copy this information, just press the copy button, and email it to support@ambay.com, just so we have a record of what equipment works with the application. So what we're trying to do is to provide magistrates with a list of devices that do work with sentencing guidelines. And we've provided that inside a spreadsheet. Here comes a spreadsheet. Which is just a running spreadsheet of all the different devices that are being used by our customers. Okay, so what this is trying to steer people towards using something which has got numbers against it, as opposed to some mysterious Chinese extraordinary internet tablet, which is great value, but is probably a better paperweight. Okay. So that's just mentioning device info. Let's go through the other tools. So first of all, preferences. Just click on the preferences button. This is where we can adjust the default cost buttons, 60, 85, 105 and 145 pound. And those are typically representative of what I see in my court. You can also change the relevant weekly income, 400 and 110. So, for example, the Sentencing Council did change these with little notice, so we can react to that by allowing you to change those inside your application. Just following on from a point that Terry made, if you prefer to look at offences by group, you can make that setting so that by default it'll always be a group-based ordering within the offence index. And correspondingly, if you're just doing family, you could change both pronouncements and adult back into family bench books and pronouncements. So that's preferences. Just finish off, there is a rounding button for rounding on. In the next release that you'll receive, we are changing that to rounding on, up, down, and off, just to support the wonderful standards that don't exist across England and Wales. So we believe some of the northern benches round down. For these rich southerners, we round up, if that makes sense. Can I ask what you do in your particular bench, ladies and gentlemen?
We normally round down.
Okay.
I think
in
we
Somerset,
would tend to round.
In Somerset, we don't round at all. We just quote the figure.
Okay, that's interesting. It just goes to show we have to cater for every variation that might occur. Okay, so that's preferences. Once you've made any change in here, those are then effective for the application. So I think I just set offences to be by group, and you can see that's set to group. Okay, so that's the sentences. We've covered the go-to in that you can go to a page number. The fine calculator is pretty well, it's pretty unusable in landscape on a small tablet. On a 7-inch Nexus or Kindle Fire, it's pretty well used in portrait only. And it's hopefully pretty obvious. We've got A-band, B-band, C-band fines. D and E band fines are rarely used. They're an alternative to custody. I've never seen them used in court yet. We have a percentage discount, obviously a third for a guilty plea, quarter after a case management hearing, 10% on the steps of the court, and not guilty or a non-attender at motoring court. We give you these two buttons just so you can quickly fire that into benefits or assumed weekly income, and you can also enter a weekly income that's other than 400. So I can go into the weekly figure and change this to a different income. Okay. We still allow you to adjust the fine after plea. So, for example, I believe Westminster magistrates, they set their own fine for crossing London Bridge over 20 miles an hour. So that just allows us to vary and apply the appropriate fine according to our judgment. They are, after all, only guidelines, aren't they, colleagues? And having established, let's make this a C-band fine based on that income, and I can set the court costs. I'll use 10%, which is the victim surcharge for offences committed after the 1st of October, and I can add that fine into the fine calculator. And you see the victim surcharge works out the victim surcharge as a percentage, 10% of the highest fine in that list of fines. I suppose if I, just to demonstrate this, let's just do a reset. Let's start off with a B-band fine on £400 per week. We'll have an £85 costs. If I do a B-band fine, you'll see victim surcharge is 27. If I change that, if I then add another fine, you'll see victim surcharge changes to 10% of the highest fine. So 10% of 400 is £40. And if I just lose that keyboard, I can see the total amounts for that particular two fines, one element of costs, one victim surcharge, a total of 790. Can you pay that bill today? The answer is usually no, of course. Okay, any questions on fine calculator?
Nick, one of the issues I seem to have on I've got a Samsung Galaxy Note, is that some of the figures, the fines, don't quite seem to fit in the box. They're a fraction too large. Most of it's there and it is legible, but it's almost as though the font size is just a fraction too large for the box space that's available.
Okay. Yes, it's a perennial problem we have in that we can't afford and don't have every tablet. If only we could. The best thing to do is if you can take a snapshot on the device. I don't know how you do that on yours, but on a Samsung, there's usually a print screen button within the bottom toolbar.
I've just done that.
Yeah, if you email that,
I will send it to you.
Yeah, we'll take a look, see if we can squeeze things down a bit. It's probably the same on the Nexus 7, I guess. It's still slightly tight. It's trying to squeeze all this on screen.
I haven't noticed any problems with the Nexus 7 in that regard yet.
Okay.
But I'll keep my eyes open.
Okay. Again,
it is just a fraction, Nick. I mean, I wouldn't want you to. It's not a major issue. It's just the top of the numbers. I'm just looking at where I've got 400 at the moment, and the 4 is quite clear. But just the top of the 00 is trimmed, and then you come down to fine after play, and it says 135, and just the top of the 3 and the side of the 5 is missing. So
yeah,
it's more than readable. So
okay,
no great complaint.
Yeah, just doing a quick tweak might help that. One thing I didn't. I've omitted to mention is if you are doing for instance, a speeding fine and it's just over 30 miles an hour, or sorry, that would be a ban fine. If it's just over 30, 35, you could mitigate that fine, or if it's outside of school, you could aggravate that fine. And this just allows you to do it between the permitted bands of 25% and 75% for that particular band A offence. You notice that as we change the band, the graphic changes through to the next band section. So C is between 125 and 175. E goes up to 200 to 300. E is 300 to 500%. So that's just mentioning the point that if you are varying a fine to be consistent across the court session, you can do that using the little slider. Okay, so that's fine calculator. We'll just move on to I'll just mention in passing the upper limits. You see the upper limits here, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are displayed at the top of an offence guideline, just so you can be slightly aware. If it looks like a big fine, your legal advisor should let you know if it's beyond the level for that offence. Of course, it's always a pleasure to assist your legal advisor when they've forgotten to mention it.
Nick, just a small point, and I just noticed I had my Samsung in landscape, and those upper limits weren't visible, didn't appear. I've now turned it into portrait, and they are.
Yeah, we couldn't squeeze them in, so something had to go.
Okay.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, let's move on from fines calculator to the speeding grid. And this again, it's up to you which way around you use it. It might be easier in landscape instead of portrait, but we've got a little bit of reference text for you at the bottom here. So this is taken out of your sentencing guidelines and guidance from the Sentencing Guidelines Council. But as soon as you click on, let's have a 38 in a 30, we provide the band fine, the national guideline points, and the proportionate points. Let me explain that. As we scroll through there, the national guideline states for 41 in the 30, your guideline is 4 to 6 points or 7 to 28 days. So what we've done is liberally is spread those points appropriately between these bands. So as you skip to 44, make it 5 points. As you skip to the next 48, make it 6 points. So you're giving a proportionate points against those speeding fines. Okay, and that goes all the way through to off the scale. So 61 and over in a 30 is above the national guideline. You'd probably look at a 56 plus day disqualification, or use totting to give them a 6 months disqualification. Okay, so just to get back to that reference information, just click back on a number, on a speed limit, we get back to that text. So the objective here was to try and get the dreaded motoring court finished before lunchtime. I think we're getting closer and closer to that, aren't we? Or maybe they're just giving us more cases, I'm not too sure. Okay, so that's the speedy.
Our court lists are very thin these days. The local police decide they can deal with it much better themselves.
And I believe the current advice is to actually ask your justice's clerk to just make a note of any offenders coming into court where out-of-court disposals are clearly wrong, and to take that up with a 6-monthly meeting, probably with the new PCC, I suppose. Okay, so a good point.
There's optimism for you.
Well, we have to try. We have to try. Let's look at the drink drive disqualification calculator. And there's a couple of features. We clearly allow you to select the number of months, so you can change that up to 36 months. And we give you all the dates. So a full disqualification without doing a course is 21 November 2015. A reduction of 252 days, 36 weeks, training completed by 14th of January would give a reduced disqualification of 14th of March. The only other point to mention here is if an offence, a disqualification was made last week, it's worth remembering, make sure you've got the correct date from which disqualification was made. And I've just hit a mute while that phone is answered. And we'll move on to the next one, which is dates. And this. So back on dates. And we give you just adjournment dates for number of weeks from today's date. We also give you dates which are useful for LASPO pronouncements. So if you're giving an 18 months community order, you're now supposed to announce the order will complete on the 22nd of May 2014 if it's an 18-week order, 18-month order. We keep increasing the number of weeks for adjournment. I just wonder when we end up with 52 weeks. I wonder. We're regularly doing adjournments for 12 to 16 weeks in our court. I guess that's the same in yours.
It is, yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's dates. I think that the next important piece to cover, this one's a little bit more difficult in my configuration, is my documents, which is you can add your own documents into the application. And to do that, you're connecting your tablet to the PC or the Mac. And unfortunately, mine doesn't display in the list of devices. However, I'm using a different piece of software called Wi-Fi File Explorer, which allows me to browse to my device. This software called Wi-Fi File Explorer Pro costs 59p, which just saves having to dig out the cable, and you can look at the SD card, scroll down to Sentencing Guidelines, My Documents. You can select the files you'd like to add. So there's all my different assets. And I can upload these into that folder. So I've now loaded all of these documents into my documents, and they can be viewed just like any other offence or any other bench guideline. So if I had everything connected, you'd now see those documents appearing within my documents here. So this is designed for you to take any documents that you've accumulated on the bench, scan them into a PDF file, and add them in through your USB cable or through this utility, which is useful for browsing your tablet. So you'll be looking for the SD card. It may also be called internal storage on a Nexus 7 or other device. And we're putting those into My Documents here. Just for those who are interested, the other folder, Sentencing Guidelines, would contain any of the PDFs that you've read. So, for example, I'm just holding up my tablet. I'm going into Sentencing Guidelines, if I can find it, into Sentencing Guidelines, and as soon as I view a PDF file, it appears within my Sentencing Guidelines folder. So if I look at causing death by dangerous driving, causing death by driving, you can see that then appears within my folder. So every PDF that you've read will appear inside the Sentencing Guidelines folder. There's adult court pronouncements as an example. Okay, so that's the last item, just looking at My Documents, which you'll be able to load onto your own tablet. Just cover updates when we have a judicial only update, just for example, update 10 of the Magistrates Court Sentencing Guidelines, which is next year sometime. We can do the update through the update screen here, unless there's a widget or a new feature or a fix that we'd like to deploy. Then it's deployed through Google Play as an application update. Okay. And apart from that, there should be a little bit of help in there. So if there's something you need just to reference, the help text hasn't been updated on my version. There it is, yep. So there's help in the application as well. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, are there just general questions you'd like to ask? I can probably tell you what's coming up next. We are working on a overweight vehicles calculator because it's a particular tricky one. And we may also give you a similar grid to speeding for excess alcohol and excess alcohol in charge. So there'll be a similar sort of grid affair to this. So we'll give you the appropriate disqualification and the points appropriate for either one of those. So that's coming up in the next 2-3 weeks, certainly before Christmas. Is there anything else you'd like it to do? An automatic expense claim submission system? No, we're not doing expenses.
Nick, is this recording going to be available to everybody in the near future?
Yes, it will. It should. I should be able to. I should be able to make it available at some point. Yes.
That's right. I heard what you said about My Documents and import, etc., etc. I won't say I fully understood it, so I shall watch it with some detail in the future.
Okay, no problem. The trick is if you can get your tablet, connected to your PC, it should appear within Windows Explorer as a device, and you can then browse onto that, and you should be able to see sentencing guidelines for my documents. Okay. Hader, can you hear me clearly enough? Is that better? We may have had some breakup on the voice communication through the call, but I hope most of it's audible for most people.
Yeah, it's been fine.
Okay. Any other general questions before we complete the course?
No, it was nice that you've gone through everything step by step, and I think the main thing is the more you use it, it's the use of it. You know, you'll get your experience and familiar with it and be more confident with it.
Yeah.
But the things that you've gone over, that sort of clarified to me in more detail that I am using it correctly and making use of the tabs. So it's nice to know that I have grasped it, and you've just confirmed that, really.
Okay, good. Some suggestions I have, just because I've been caught out before, you need to check you've got enough charge in the tablet. You need to check probably that you're not going to disturb the court, so put it into airline mode so that nothing else is going to happen, and probably hit mute. So if your grandson has been playing Angry Birds, for example, it doesn't suddenly launch into a tune mid-pronouncement. So those are my suggestions.
Yeah.
Just do yourself a favour, make sure nothing can interfere with your court session.
Yes.
So it's just little things. I've left the speakers on, and Siri has kicked in on an iPad or something. It's just worth double checking those things don't happen.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
Okay, I'm just going to stop that recording.